Picture the Australian outback, stretching endlessly in every direction. Red dirt roads disappearing into heat haze on horizons that never seem to end. Towns so remote that the nearest neighbour might be 300 kilometres away across empty desert. South Australia holds some of the most isolated and bizarre settlements on Earth. Places where populations dwindle to single digits, where abandoned buildings outnumber living residents, and where the stories are stranger than any fiction writer could imagine. From underground towns carved deep into hillsides to escape deadly heat, to communities surviving on nothing but stubbornness and bore water, to places that exist on maps but barely exist in reality, these are the settlements that defy logic, challenge convention, and somehow continue to exist against all odds. Today, we're counting down the 10 weirdest and most isolated towns in South Australia. Some you've never heard of. Others you won't believe still have people living in them. Welcome to the edge of civilization. Welcome to the Outback's strangest corners. If you love documentaries that explore the unusual and forgotten corners of Australia, hit that subscribe button now. We cover the towns, the stories, and the places most people will never see. Now let's venture deep into the isolation. Number 10. William Creek, population 3. Yes, you heard that right. 3 permanent residents. Located 560 kilometres north of Adelaide, William Creek holds the title of Australia's smallest town. The red earth surrounding this tiny settlement stretches unbroken to every horizon. The single pub, the William Creek Hotel, serves as post office, general store, and the social hub for the massive surrounding cattle stations. The town sits on Lake Eyre's edge, Australia's largest salt lake. When the lake floods, which happens rarely, tourists flood into William Creek to witness the transformation. The pub's walls are covered in thousands of business cards, driver's licenses, and currency from visitors who've made the pilgrimage to the middle of nowhere. Outside, rusted car wrecks and sun-bleached machinery create an apocalyptic sculpture garden in the red dust. The Oodnadatta Track, one of Australia's most famous outback routes, runs directly through William Creek. Temperatures regularly exceed 45 degrees Celsius in summer. The nearest significant town, Coober Pedy, lies 200 kilometres north. The isolation is so complete that mail delivery happens by light aircraft twice a week. At night, the Milky Way sprawls across the sky with such clarity that the ground seems to glow in reflected starlight. Despite having only 3 residents, William Creek maintains an active social life during tourist season. The pub hosts the annual William Creek Races, where outback communities gather for horse racing, camping, and the kind of legendary drinking sessions that become part of local folklore. For the rest of the year, those 3 residents maintain infrastructure, serve the occasional adventurous traveller, and exist in a solitude most people cannot fathom. Number 9. Farina, the ghost town that refuses to die completely. Located 600 kilometres north of Adelaide in the Flinders Ranges, Farina once thrived as a railway town and agricultural hub with 600 residents, 2 hotels, a bakery, general stores, and a brewery in the late 1800s. Today, the population sits at 0, but the ruins tell a haunting story of ambition and failure. Stone buildings stand roofless under the merciless sun. The old bakery's walls still show the scorch marks from its ovens. The cemetery on the hill overlooks the crumbling town, its headstones weathered smooth by decades of sandstorms. What makes Farina weird is the dedicated volunteer group that camps there regularly, slowly restoring the ruins and maintaining the site as a living museum of outback failure and persistence. The town was established during a wheat farming boom that ignored one critical fact. The rainfall wasn't sufficient or reliable enough to sustain agriculture. Within 30 years, the dream collapsed. The railway that gave Farina life eventually killed it when the Garn railway line shifted westward. By 1937, the town was abandoned completely. Ruins sprawl across the landscape in organised rows, showing the grid pattern of streets that once bustled with activity. The underground bakery, dug deep to keep temperatures manageable, now serves as the most impressive structure. Volunteers have restored sections of the roof and cleared decades of sand from the interior. Signs throughout the ruins explain what each building was, creating a self-guided tour through a civilization that bet everything on unforgiving land and lost. Number 8. Udnadatta, the town where temperature broke Australian records and the resilience of its residents became legendary. Located 860 kilometres north of Adelaide, Udnadatta holds the record for Australia's highest ever recorded temperature, 50.7 degrees Celsius on January 2nd, 1960. The red earth around the town seems to radiate heat even in winter. The population fluctuates around 200 residents, predominantly from the local Aboriginal community. The town serves as a crucial service centre for the massive cattle stations spreading across millions of hectares of surrounding land. The pink roadhouse, painted in impossible shades of pink and white, stands as the town's iconic landmark, visible from kilometres away across the flat, red landscape. Udnadatta's weirdness comes from its extremes: extreme heat, extreme isolation, extreme toughness required to survive here. The old Garn railway line, now abandoned, runs past the town, its rusted tracks disappearing into gibber plains that stretch to the horizon. During summer, the heat is so intense that metal surfaces become untouchable. Car tyres can melt on the pavement. Yet life continues. The town's name comes from the Aboriginal word meaning flowering mulga. The irony is thick. This is one of Australia's driest regions, receiving an average of just 150 millimetres of rain annually. When rain does come, usually in unpredictable bursts, the town transforms briefly into something resembling an oasis before the sun reclaims everything. Udnadatta is weird because it exists at all, thriving in conditions that should make human habitation impossible. Number 7. Coober Pedy, the underground town where 70% of residents live in caves carved into hillsides. Located 846 kilometres north of Adelaide, Coober Pedy produces more than 70% of the world's opals. The town's name comes from the Aboriginal phrase Coober Pedy, meaning white man's hole, an accurate description. Walking through Coober Pedy feels like exploring a science fiction movie set. Hills surrounding the town are pockmarked with thousands of mining shafts. Waste rock piles, called mullock heaps, create a lunar landscape in every direction. Underground homes, called dugouts, maintain a constant temperature of around 23 degrees Celsius, regardless of the blistering heat or occasional winter cold above ground. The town contains underground churches, underground hotels, and even an underground bookstore. The Serbian Orthodox Church, carved entirely into the rock, features stunning stained glass and intricate stonework invisible from the surface. Visitors descend stairs into the hillside to attend services in a space that feels both ancient and alien. Above ground, the town presents an apocalyptic aesthetic. Rusted machinery, abandoned mining equipment, and warning signs about unmarked shafts create constant danger. At night, tourists are warned never to walk backward. A single misstep could send someone tumbling down an unmarked mining shaft invisible in the darkness. Coober Pedy's population sits around 1,700, drawn from more than 45 different nationalities. Everyone came for opals. The mining continues day and night. The sound of drills and machinery provides the town's constant soundtrack. The isolation is profound despite the population. The nearest significant city, Adelaide, lies nearly 900 kilometres south. Yet, Coober Pedy survives, thrives even, because of what lies beneath the ground. Number 6. Mari, population 60. The gateway to the Udnadatta track and home to one of Australia's strangest mysteries. Located 680 kilometres north of Adelaide, Marie sits at the junction of the Birdsville Track and the Oodnadatta Track, making it a crucial stopping point for outback travellers despite its tiny size. The town's weirdness centres around the Marie Man, a massive geoglyph depicting an Aboriginal hunter with a throwing stick carved into the plateau west of town. The figure measures 4.2 kilometres long with a perimeter of 28 kilometres. It was discovered in 1998 by a charter pilot. Nobody knows who created it or why. The lines were carved 15 to 30 centimetres deep into the desert surface. Despite extensive investigations, the creator has never been identified. The mystery deepens with an unsigned fax sent to a local hotel containing detailed coordinates and a press release about the artwork, along with references to obscure American artwork. Some theories suggest satellite technology and GPS equipment were used in its creation. Others claim it was an elaborate art project. The Marie Man has faded significantly over the years, visible now mainly from the air under the right light conditions. Beyond the geoglyph mystery, Marie itself carries historical significance as a major railway junction. Afghan cameleers used Marie as a base, and the town's cultural history reflects this unique heritage. The cameleers transported goods into the interior before roads and modern railways existed. The town sits on Lake Eyre's edge, which spends most years as a dry salt pan. When rare floods fill the lake, Marie becomes a focal point for birdwatchers and tourists hoping to witness the transformation. Pelicans arrive in tens of thousands. The desert briefly blooms. Then the water evaporates and emptiness returns. Number 5. Inaminka, population 12. Located on Cooper Creek in the state's northeast, roughly 1,060 kilometres from Adelaide, Inaminka occupies one of the most historically significant and isolated spots in South Australia. This is where the Burke and Wills expedition ended in tragedy in 1861. The Burke and Wills Dig tree still stands on Cooper Creek's banks, marked with the expedition members' carvings. Robert O'Hara, Burke and William John Wills, attempting to cross Australia from south to north, died near here after returning to find their supply depot abandoned. The story of their deaths from starvation, just kilometres from Aboriginal people who could have saved them, remains one of Australia's most tragic exploration tales. Inaminka's 12 permanent residents maintain historic sites, run the trading post, and serve occasional tourists brave enough to make the journey. The town sits in the Stresseleki Desert, surrounded by red sand dunes and scattered stands of coolabah trees along the creek. During summer, temperatures exceed 50 degrees. During winter, nights drop below freezing. Cooper Creek, when flowing, creates an oasis effect. Pelicans and waterbirds gather in thousands. The contrast between water and surrounding desert creates surreal beauty. But the creek doesn't always flow. When it dries, Inaminka becomes an island of survival in an ocean of sand and spinifex. The drive to Inaminka requires serious preparation. Multiple creek crossings, stretches of corrugated dirt road, no mobile coverage for hundreds of kilometres. Breaking down here without preparation can be fatal. The nearest help might be a full day's drive away. Yet those 12 residents choose this life, sustained by history, stubbornness, and a strange love for the emptiness. Number 4. Andamuka, the opal town where land titles don't exist and everyone technically squats. Located 600 kilometres north of Adelaide, Andamuka produces opals from fields discovered in 1930. The population usually hovers around 300. What makes Andamuka truly weird is its legal status. The entire town sits on pastoral land. Nobody owns their property. Everyone technically squats on land they don't legally own. This creates a Wild West atmosphere where official regulation barely exists. Houses range from tidy homes to to shipping containers assembled into barely livable shelters. The landscape looks like a war zone. Tens of thousands of mining shafts pockmark the earth. Mullock heaps create mountains of waste rock. At night, miners work claims under floodlights, drilling deep, hoping for that one big find. The town contains no reticulated water. Every drop comes from bores or is trucked in. Summer temperatures exceed 45 degrees. Yet people stay, chasing opals in this strange legal limbo, creating a community bound by shared hardship and shared dreams of striking it rich. Number 3. Lee Creek, the abandoned coal mining town slowly being reclaimed by the Outback. Located 550 kilometres north of Adelaide in the Flinders Ranges, Lee Creek once housed nearly 2,000 people who worked the massive open-cut coal mine supplying Port Augusta Power Station. The town was purpose-built by government in 1982. Every house identical, every street planned. For decades, Lee Creek represented successful resource town planning. Then in 2015, the coal mine closed. Within months, the town emptied. Today, Lee Creek is one of Australia's newest ghost towns. Houses stand empty but intact, doors open, possessions abandoned, as if residents left, expecting to return tomorrow. The swimming pool sits dry and cracked. The shopping centre's windows are broken. The school playground swings move in the wind, creaking eerily. What makes Lee Creek weird is how quickly it happened. Most ghost towns died slowly over decades. Lee Creek collapsed in months. The government now faces the question of what to do with it. Demolition costs millions. Selling homes is nearly impossible given the isolation. So Lee Creek sits in limbo, a perfectly preserved snapshot of 21st century mining life, slowly rotting in desert sun. A skeleton population remains. Perhaps 20 people who refuse to leave, maintaining services for the few cattle stations remaining. These holdouts live in strange twilight existence, occupying a town built for thousands, surrounded by empty homes and silent streets. Number 2. Umberetana, population 0. An abandoned railway settlement in the northern Flinders Ranges that has achieved strange fame among urban explorers. Located roughly 500 kilometres north of Adelaide, Umberetana once served as a railway siding on the old Garn railway line. The town never had large population, perhaps 50 at its peak in the early 1900s. The railway station, workers' cottages, and water tanks served trains pushing north toward Alice Springs. When the new Garn line was built further west in 1980, Umberetana's purpose vanished overnight. The residents left. Buildings were abandoned to the elements. Today, ruins of Umberetana sit scattered along the old railway formation. Stone walls remain from railway workers' cottages. The station building foundation is still visible. Rusted water tanks lean at impossible angles. The old railway tracks have been torn up, leaving only earthen embankment cutting through landscape. The nearest active town, Beltana, lies 30 kilometres south with a population of approximately 7 people. What makes Umberetana truly weird is its accessibility combined with utter abandonment. Unlike many ghost towns on private land, Umberetana can be visited freely. Campers park among ruins. Four-wheel drive adventurers use it as a base. At night, ruins create eerie silhouettes against the star-filled sky. The wind howls through empty window frames. The landscape around Umberetana shows the Flinders Ranges at their most dramatic. Ancient mountain ranges, folded and eroded over hundreds of millions of years, create jagged ridges and deep gorges. Umberetana represents the reality of outback settlement. Towns appear when economic necessity demands them. They vanish just as quickly when that necessity ends. Number 1. Maralinga, the former nuclear test site that remains restricted, contaminated, and deeply haunted by Australia's darkest chapter. Located 800 kilometres northwest of Adelaide in the Great Victoria Desert, Maralinga hosted British nuclear weapons tests from 1956 to 1963. 7 major nuclear bombs were detonated here, along with hundreds of smaller tests involving radioactive materials. The tests contaminated vast areas with plutonium. Aboriginal people from the local Maralinga Tjarutja community, whose traditional lands these were, suffered horrific health consequences. Many were never warned about the tests. Some watched explosions from what authorities considered safe distances that proved tragically inadequate. Cancer rates, birth defects, and ongoing health issues in the community stand as testimony to one of Australia's greatest injustices. The town built to support testing house scientists, military personnel, and support staff during the active testing period. After tests ended, the British attempted cleanup operations that were grossly inadequate. Contaminated soil was simply buried. Equipment was abandoned. The Australian government eventually conducted more extensive cleanup in the 1990s, costing hundreds of millions. Today, Maralinga remains restricted. Access requires special permission from traditional owners and government authorities. The old town site contains abandoned buildings, rusted vehicles, and crumbling infrastructure. Warning signs mark contaminated zones. Cleanup removed the worst contamination, but areas remain that will be dangerous for thousands of years. The weirdness of Maralinga goes beyond physical contamination. This is a place where the Australian government allowed a foreign power to conduct nuclear weapons tests on sovereign Australian soil, on Aboriginal traditional lands, with catastrophic consequences. The site stands as a reminder of colonialism, environmental destruction, and the human cost of nuclear weapons programs. The land itself seems cursed to many who visit. The desert around Maralinga looks like every other stretch of Outback. Red sand, scattered vegetation, endless horizon. But knowing what happened here changes everything. The abandoned buildings carry menace that has nothing to do with radiation and everything to do with history and guilt. The silence feels oppressive. Maralinga will never be a normal town again. Traditional owners have regained control of their lands, but vast areas remain contaminated beyond safe use. The town site is slowly being reclaimed by desert, metal rusts, concrete crumbles. In decades, little physical evidence may remain, but the contamination, both radioactive and historical, will persist far longer than any human structure. South Australia's weirdest and most isolated towns tell stories of ambition, failure, resilience, and the harsh realities of living on the edge of possibility. From William Creek's 3 hardy residents to Maralinga's toxic abandonment, these places challenge our understanding of community and the human drive to survive. These towns exist because of minerals, railways, or military necessity. They persist because a handful of people refuse to leave, or they collapse when the forces that created them vanish. Each one offers a glimpse into the extremes of Australian life, the isolation that defines the Outback, and the weird, wonderful, and sometimes tragic stories emerging from the red centre. What's your take on these isolated settlements? Could you live in William Creek with only 2 other permanent residents? Would you brave Coober Pedy's underground existence? Or does Maralinga's tragedy make you question how we treat land and people in the pursuit of progress? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one and love hearing from travellers and history enthusiasts. If you enjoyed this journey through South Australia's strangest corners, hit that like button and subscribe for more documentaries exploring Australia's hidden places. We cover the towns, stories, and locations that mainstream travel shows ignore. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay curious about the weird corners of this vast continent.